Tonight, he lied to everyone for years. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, says Peter Mandelson, the man he made US ambassador, betrayed the country.
If I knew then what I know now, he would never have been anywhere near government.
After moving vans is seen at Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's former mansion, a congressman tells us US investigators should try again to interview the ex-prince.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, not just Andrew, but really a lot of the people who are involved in some of these crimes or may have been involved in some of these crimes.
And one of Andrew's key denials about the saga is being called into question by a statement from Ghislaine Maxwell. Elsewhere in the Epstein files,
you can see I have a little sore on my face that I got from some black guy trying to kiss me.
The paedophile's secret recording, apparently behind bars, describing what he called a disgusting kiss attempt by another inmate. Also tonight, the sun sets on nuclear arms control. The last weapons pact between America and Russia expires in hours. Home to a shattered landscape and uncertain future, a trickle of people are allowed in and out of Gaza's partially reopened Rafah crossing. And the paper of Watergate gutted. The Jeff Bezos-owned Washington Post lays off a third of its staff in a blow to a legendary news brand. That is all ahead in the world with me, Dominic Waghorn. Good evening and welcome to the programme. The Prime Minister found himself backed into a political corner today by the Epstein scandal that has implicated wealthy, powerful and influential people around the world, including the man that Sir Keir Starmer made Britain's ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson. He was sacked last September over his Epstein links, having already resigned from the Lords, but now faces potential criminal investigation and being stripped of his title. MPs on all sides pushed even further tonight, voting for the release of files on Mandelson's appointment as ambassador. In other developments, Melinda French Gates has said her ex-husband, Bill, has questions to answer about allegations against him. But the billionaire insists his associations with Epstein were innocent.
I was only at dinners. I never went to the island. I never met any women. And so, the more that comes out, the more clear it'll be.
Well, more on that shortly. First, political editor Beth Rigby reports on an extraordinary day in Westminster.
I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it.
What on earth just happened? Well, what you saw there is a government in full-blown retreat. It might not have looked like it, but make no mistake, this was a humiliating defeat. Because not only do the government have to disclose all of the Mandelson files, but they don't get to decide which bits of it to hold back in the name of national security. They have to hand that decision over to the Parliament Intelligence and Security Committee. And who forced them to do that? Their own MPs.
There are well-worn filters through Parliament, through the Select Committee corridor, and there are various committees that could have locus in this space, to properly and sensitively handle information. I think there is consensus, Mr. Speaker, that everybody wants as much information as possible in the public domain so that we can get to the bottom of what has happened.
Now, that intervention, and all of it, I should say, was kicked off by none other than Angela Rayner earlier in the debate, only came about because Labour MPs don't trust their own government. They want independent oversight of the Mandelson files. And if that wasn't a low point, it gets even worse for Keir Starmer because the Met Police has now said that they don't want the government to release any evidence that might prejudice their investigation, the very evidence that Keir Starmer wants to release to prove to his MPs that he really was deeply misled by Mandelson. So that's another problem for Keir Starmer. The PM is in a serious bind because he needs to prove to his MPs that he was seriously misled. And I can tell you that his MPs are febrile, some of them feeling very, very compromised and wondering what they should do next. So this is a huge scandal. It's potentially the biggest political scandal of this century. How on earth did we get here?
Mandelson betrayed our country, our Parliament and my party.
Over the weekend, it emerged that Peter Mandelson, when he was in government in 2009, leaked market-sensitive, top-secret government information to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And to give you a sense of how serious this is, Mandelson is now under criminal investigation for this, for misconduct in public office and leaking confidential government information. And if he's prosecuted and convicted, well, he could face jail time. So that is pretty enormous, and I don't need to tell you how bad it looks. But that isn't where it ends, because the scandal has come right to the door of the current Prime Minister. And that's because last year, Keir Starmer personally brought Peter Mandelson back into government as the ambassador in Washington for the UK. It was a massive job, and I don't need to tell you that the Prime Minister has now massively ruined the day he took that decision.
I regret appointing him. If I knew then what I know now, he would never have been anywhere near government.
The mood hardened even further against Starmer today at Prime Minister's Questions when he admitted that he knew about Mandelson's ongoing friendship with Epstein.
Can the Prime Minister tell us, did the official security vetting he received mention Mandelson's ongoing relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein?
So clear. Prime Minister.
Yes, it did.
Now, for some of his MPs, it is simply unforgivable that he reappointed Mandelson when he knew this information. Because the Prime Minister brought him back into the fold, it's now a very live political crisis at the heart of Starmer's government. Now, he will hope that the release of documents will relieve the pressure on him and prove what he's saying, that he was badly misled. But he cannot be sure of that. And for a Prime Minister in the predicament he's already in, that is a very, very dangerous place to be.
Beth Rigby there. Well, the former wife of Microsoft billionaire Bill Gates has said he has questions to answer about his associations with Jeffrey Epstein. Melinda spoke of painful times in their marriage as her ex-husband expressed regret about meeting Epstein but denied wrongdoing. Here's our data and forensics editor, Tom Cheshire.
We've now been through more than 60,000 photos and videos and thousands more emails in the Epstein files. Here's what you need to know. Bill Gates is the latest high-profile figure to face pressure after being named in the files. This photo of him is taken from there. We don't have the context around it. And again, merely appearing in the files isn't a suggestion of wrongdoing. Now, in one email sent by Jeffrey Epstein to himself, a draft email that was never sent on to anyone else, he accuses Bill Gates of catching a sexually transmitted infection and then secretly trying to provide antibiotics to his wife at the time, Melinda Gates. Bill Gates has rejected that allegation, saying it is false, and says he regrets ever meeting Jeffrey Epstein. Now, in another email sent by Epstein to himself, he says that he was helping Bill to get drugs in order to deal with consequences of sex with Russian girls. Again, he's denied those allegations, but his wife, Melinda Gates, his ex-wife, has said that he has to answer some questions.
For me, it's personally hard whenever those details come up, right? Because brings back memories of some very, very painful times in my marriage, but I have moved on from that. I purposely pushed it away and I moved on. I'm in a really unexpected, beautiful place in my life. So whatever questions remain there of what I can't even begin to know all of it, those questions are for those people and for even my ex-husband. They need to answer to those things, not me.
The co-founder of Microsoft has not been accused by any of Epstein's victims, and he called the allegations absurd and completely false. He also spoke on Australia's Channel 9.
I met Jeffrey in 2011, so over a period of 3 years, I had a number of dinners with him. The focus was always, he knew a lot of very rich people, and he was saying he could get them to give money to global health. You know, it's factually true that I was only at dinners, you know, I never went to the island, I never met any women, and so, you know, the more that comes out, the more clear it'll be that although the time was a mistake, It had nothing to do with that kind of behavior.
We've also unearthed more emails detailing the relationship between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein. This is an email from 2010 where Peter Mandelson says he's gone to a spa. It was great, apart from the lack of happy ending. Now, whether that's a joke or not, it's notable that Mandelson is using sexualized language here, because when he's previously talked about his relationship with Epstein, he said that as a gay man, he was kept away from the sexual nature of his life. And then there's this, another email exchange, and this one was sent on the day that Jeffrey Epstein was released from prison in 2009 after being convicted of soliciting child prostitution. He says, free and home. Mandelson writes back, how shall we celebrate? Epstein says to him, with grace and modesty. Those are the names of two strippers. Mandelson replies, from now on, grace and modesty should be discovered in London. We've also found new video of Jeffrey Epstein himself, apparently in detention, apparently sending a covert message to two women. We're not naming the two women. And he appears to be in detention because of the clothes he's wearing, the context in which he talks, and the backdrop.
Okay, so Darren and I are sitting here. You can hear the echo. I'm pretending I'm talking to Darren. So, hi Darren. So, you guys having a good time? You can see I have a little sore on my face that I got from some black guy trying to kiss me. It's really disgusting. With his tongue. Oh, it's really, oh. Anyway, I have pictures up on the wall. I had to borrow the Scotch tape to get the pictures on the wall. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
That video is in stark contrast to most of what we've seen in the Epstein files, which show him living an extravagant billionaire lifestyle. Instead, we see where his crimes led him. So too with this more than 400-page report from the FBI investigating his death in custody. That was eventually ruled a suicide.
Well, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has left his home in Windsor to take up residence on the Sandringham estate, but explosive claims have followed him to Norfolk. Legal letters revealed in the file suggest he and Epstein engaged in sexual acts with an exotic dancer. Andrew's always proclaimed his innocence, but an email appears to cast doubt over his denials about Virginia Giuffre, accused him of sexual abuse. Our royal correspondent Laura Bundock has that side of the story.
The former home of the former Prince Andrew. He left Royal Lodge on Monday, but he can't escape the questions. Found in the recent dump of documents a statement from Ghislaine Maxwell, which appears to cast doubt about Andrew's denial of this image. She describes a photo being taken of him in 2001 in her home. He'd insisted he was at Pizza Express in Woking on the evening in question. And found, too, this legal letter appearing to represent a stripper who claimed she performed for Epstein and Andrew. It says, Mr. Epstein and Prince Andrew then told my client they wanted to have a threesome. She said she was hired to dance, not to have sex. Mr. Epstein said they would pay her later for dancing, and they prevailed upon her to engage in various sex acts. We approached Andrew's office for comment. Also found in the files more emails thought to be from a Russian woman who Epstein had invited Andrew to meet. She emails Epstein, hi Jeffrey, how are you? I booked the tickets. We'll be in London August 20th to 25th. Epstein replies, great. 3 days later, he emails an address called The Duke, saying, I have a friend who I think you might enjoy having dinner with. Her name is, she will be in London 20th to 24th. The Duke replies, of course, I'm in Geneva until the morning of 22nd, but would be delighted to see her. Will she be bringing a message from you? On the 23rd, she emails Epstein, I had an amazing night, thank you. And 2 days later says, thank you again for everything. My trip has been a really special adventure. We don't know if this Russian woman is the same Russian who claims she was trafficked to the UK and sent to spend the night with Andrew at Royal Lodge. But we know Thames Valley Police is assessing these allegations.
It's not the first time authorities here have been involved. In 2020, the US formally asked the UK for help arranging an interview with Andrew, making what's known as an MLA request. But the UK resisted. Now, in amongst the Epstein files, we found these emails between the US Department of Justice and the Home Office.
One says all we want to do is ask some questions. Do they really refuse to permit that? Now calls for the US to try talking to Andrew again.
What I'd like to know is what he knows of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and his entire enterprise, as well as his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, because it's very clear that he had a close one.
Andrew strongly denies any wrongdoing. The law firm he used didn't respond to our requests for comment. He's now starting life here in rural Norfolk, out of sight, but still in the minds of those investigating the crimes of Epstein. Laura Bundock, Sky News.
You saw there in Laura's report the Democratic Congressman Suhas Subramaniam, who's a member of the US House Oversight Committee, which is investigating Jeffrey Epstein. I spoke to him earlier about why American lawmakers want both Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Peter Mandelson in front of them to answer questions.
You know, I hate to speculate because there's no proof of wrongdoing yet, but I will say there's a lot of pictures of him with, some of the girls. Virginia Giuffre was one famous example, but there's been others since of him. And then clearly he's coming up in a lot of these documents and emails. And so I think his association with Jeffrey Epstein ran a lot deeper than what he's let on. And what we want to know now is the truth. And so if he does come and speak to our committee, the one thing I would ask for is for him to do so under some form of penalty of perjury so that we know he's telling the truth, because he has not been entirely truthful to date.
It turns out from our research, Sky's research into the Epstein files, that the FBI and DOJ have been trying since 2020 to put in a mutual legal assistance request to interview him, and under UK-US rules and laws that is possible, but the UK and Andrew's lawyers, it seems, have been stalling, and so far that hasn't happened, and the British have not acquiesced with that request. The FBI has not renewed that request for a mutual legal assistance right to interview Andrew. Do you think the US government, therefore, is kind of stalling on this? Would you like them to do more in that respect?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, not just Andrew, but really a lot of the people who are involved in some of these crimes or may have been involved in some of these crimes. If we find evidence that points to their association with Jeffrey Epstein and perhaps wrongdoing, then they should be interviewed by law enforcement too. The reality is our committee and our work on Capitol Hill is we're not law enforcement, so we don't have the same authorities in some way, and we certainly don't have any authority over foreign national like Andrew. But UK police do, and so if they wanted to launch an investigation, they ought to. And if the FBI has questions too, I think we should all strive for people to be cooperative with the FBI.
What can Peter Mandelson do to help you as well? Are you actually actively seeking him to submit to your questioning as well?
Well, he's certainly becoming a person of interest. Again, I let the documents do the talking, and if people continue to show up in the documents, I want to know more about their association with Epstein, whether Epstein was using their position of power for his own benefit in any way. And I don't care what political party they're in or, how powerful or rich they are or were. And this investigation isn't just about the crimes Epstein committed. It's also about the cover-up and about how he was able to get away and commit more crimes when he should have been put behind bars.
I think it's fair to say the suspicion on this side of the Atlantic is, though Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Peter Mandelson are obviously of significant interest, that they are, in a sense, a sideshow. And the main attraction in this controversy is still President Trump, who fought tooth and nail for these files not to be released. It is now legally incumbent on the administration to release these files, but, millions of them have still not been released. You have said that you believe, from what you've seen so far, there are a lot of revealing things about Trump's relationship with Epstein that you've seen, but a lot more to come out. Can you explain to viewers why we are not seeing all these files and how much you believe President Trump is still hiding from the American public about what exactly he did with Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, I think you're right that this investigation was not supposed to be about anyone in particular, including President Trump. We were not setting out to investigate President Trump. In fact, we thought he would be more transparent about this than any other figure in this, but instead he's become the villain of this investigation by withholding files, telling his staff who was committed to releasing files to withhold them. We basically backed the president into a corner and by having him sign a law, essentially forcing him to release the files. And there's 2.5 million files that he still hasn't released by the DOJ's own admission. There's a lot of information that's missing, and President Trump has it, and his DOJ has it, and he's withholding that. And so we're going to continue to push, though. Even if he doesn't release one more file, we still have many other interviews that we're going to pursue. We're also going to make sure that we talk to others as well.
Sure.
Investigate.
But do you think the whole sort of American democratic system of oversight and scrutiny simply isn't working? And to add to that, President Trump talked about nationalising elections, and one of his key lieutenants, Steve Bannon, talking about surrounding polling stations with ICE agents. How worried should we be in the UK here about American democracy simply just dying on its feet, and you guys not really holding the administration to account to stop that happening?
Well, I think I worry every day about our democracy, especially under this president, who has been one of the most anti-democratic presidents in recent history. And so I want to continue to ensure that our democracy works. And we're going to fight every corner, every tooth and nail to make sure that we protect that. If President Trump thinks that, people will never get to the truth, he's very, very wrong. And same with others who perpetrated some of these crimes or helped Epstein with these crimes.
Yeah, but what is the sense of urgency? Because the wheels do seem to be grinding exceedingly slow in your investigation with Epstein. And there does seem to be a sense of acquiescence at the moment with what Donald Trump appears to be doing, potentially, to American democracy.
Well, there is no acquiescence. So what he's trying to do when it comes to American democracy, this investigation or anything else, we heard some of these statements loud and clear about sending, agents, ICE agents to voting booths to make sure that we are protecting elections, quote unquote. We will not let that happen. We are having a fight right now on funding ICE and the Department of Homeland Security. I've called for Secretary Noem's impeachment. But in this case, we will continue to put pressure on this administration. We will not let them undermine our democracy.
Well, staying in the US, but on another issue also affecting President Trump's polling figures, that's immigration. He's conceded that on that issue and immigration enforcement, his administration could be using a softer touch. It follows the decision to pull 700 so-called ICE officers out of Minneapolis, where agents shot and killed 2 people and have been involved in violence with protesters. Speak now to our US correspondent, Mark Stone. Mark, previous announcements about scaling down ICE activities in Minnesota have seemed more window dressing than substantial. Is this more of the same?
Well, first of all, look at the numbers. He's saying 700 are to be pulled out. That leaves still about 2,000 in Minneapolis. So, looking at those numbers, I think the mayor of Minneapolis, the Democrat mayor of Minneapolis, is right in saying that this represents just a drop in the ocean. But it's a drop in the ocean. It's certainly in the right direction as far as the Democratic leaders in that city and in that state would like to see. Donald Trump has done an interview this afternoon. It comes after the announcement by Tom Homan, who is the Trump's border czar, announcing that pullout of 700 or so ICE agents from Minneapolis. Have a listen to President Trump and listen to his tone. It's certainly a shift.
I learned that maybe we can use a little bit of a softer touch, but you still have to be tough. These are criminals. We're dealing with really hard criminals. But look, I've called the people. I've called the governor. I've called the mayor, spoke to them, had great conversations with them. And then I see them ranting and raving out there, literally as though a call wasn't made.
Mark, you went to an area in an interesting report, I think, over the weekend, looking at what this issue and what the ICE controversy is doing in an area where largely people are supportive of Trump. Overall, what kind of damage do you think this is doing to Trump, months ahead of those crucial midterm elections?
Well, I think that's the point. It is the midterm elections in just a few months' time, in November. I think Trump and his team are well aware that they run the risk of really damaging what has been a clearly successful policy, immigration, over the course of the past year that he has been in office. I mean, there's no question that the southern border was a massive, massive mess under the Biden administration, and it is now not a mess. It's sorted extraordinarily, very successfully. The Trump administration has managed to deal with the illegal movement of people across that border. Indeed, last week, Interpol released a report into immigration globally, and it's their assessment that now more people are flowing southwards from Central America into South America than are coming north into North America and into the United States. That's remarkable. That's a Trump success story, and he runs the risk now of massively damaging that, because even his own side, Republicans, are really quite worried about the optics of what they're seeing in places like Minnesota with ICE agents, untrained, killing people in 2 cases in Minneapolis. That is uncomfortable. And so I think it is clear, as you heard from the president there, he's trying to reframe all this and put it back to what he thinks is a success, which is dealing with immigration on the southern border.
Mark, thank you for now. I think we're going to come back to you by the end of the programme, but thank you for now. We're going to give you some breaking news now on the war in Ukraine. President Zelensky has given his most definitive estimate yet on the number of Ukrainian soldiers killed since Russia's invasion. Speaking to France 2, a TV channel, he said it's at least 55,000. That, he says, includes professional soldiers and conscripts. It's worth noting that conflict observers believe as many as 100 to 140,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed. But I think that is the first time we've heard from the Ukrainian president giving a definitive figure. Those casualty figures have been something of a state secret in Ukraine, at least until now. More on that later if it comes in. But for now, you're watching The World with me, Dominic Waghorn. Still to come, the Kremlin connection. I'll ask an ex-spy about claims that Jeffrey Epstein was linked to Russian intelligence.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Welcome back. You're watching The World, and yet another twist in the Epstein saga. Poland is investigating links it believes that Epstein had with Russian intelligence. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk claims that the paedophile financier spied for Russia and that Moscow had a role in his crimes. Russia's yet to comment, but has distanced itself in the past. President Putin's name appears more than 1,000 times in the latest tranche of Epstein files. It's claimed that Epstein sought, seemingly unsuccessfully, to meet with Putin. Well, I spoke with the former MI6 intelligence officer Christopher Steele to get his assessment.
Yes, I think anyone who knows about Russia and Poland is aware that the Poles actually have a very sophisticated understanding of Russia and a good counterintelligence capability. And for them to be so overtly saying that they think the Russians were behind the Epstein operation gives us pause for thought. We should certainly be liaising with them and taking it very seriously.
So far, the story's been about certain celebrity figures, certainly certain high-profile characters, but this is shifting, isn't it, in a different direction. Do you think, though, we're looking at pictures of Jeffrey Epstein there, do we think that the man that we're seeing on the screen now, was he a Russian agent, do you think? Was he compromised sufficiently by the Kremlin to have been operating by them and gathering information and operating to compromise other figures in the West?
Yeah, it's important to be clear about definitions here when we talk about people being agents. There are different sorts of agents. But if you're talking about facilitation, and if you're talking about influence, which are two of the aspects of work that agents can perform for hostile foreign powers, then I think he almost certainly was an agent. And my contacts in America tell me that, without doubt, Epstein's career, if we can call it that, began in the 1970s in New York. And that at that point, he was basically in touch with Russian organized crime groups at Brighton Beach. And as you probably know, there is little, certainly these days, light between Russian organized crime groups and Russian intelligence. And that is how he would have been picked up and recruited and trained and run back against this celebrity network. Which
I suppose will give us one answer to the mystery as to where Epstein got his money from. But I mean, and clearly from what we know now about him, he was able to compromise, charm, and kind of put under his spell a lot of important people potentially in the West. How much of that do you think was on the kind of the beck and call of the Kremlin, and how much should we be worried about these Western figures effectively being compromised by what you're saying is effectively a Russian agent?
Well, obviously, it's quite historic, some of this now, if it goes back as far as that. But nevertheless, I think we should be very concerned. I mean, I've always worked on the assumption that the Russians have the Epstein files, basically, and there are several reasons for that. And one of them is that, again, you may be aware, a former American detective called John Dugan, who was working in Palm Beach at the time of the Epstein investigation down there, actually defected to Russia in 2016, which of course is a key year in all this. It's the year Donald Trump was elected and the Russians interfered in his election to get him elected, and claims to have gone with a large stash of Epstein files and Epstein material that he obtained in Palm Beach. Now, Dugan is a bit of a Walter Mitty character. He was being investigated for corruption, I believe, or fraud at the time. But nevertheless, his story in this respect, at least, does seem to be credible. The Russians wouldn't have accepted someone like that as a defector unless he had something to offer them that they were convinced was genuine. So I think going right back, there are several sort of pinch points, if you like, in the history of this, and they all point to the Russians having Epstein material, and if they had it, they would have certainly used it. The other thing I think is interesting is that Donald Trump, if you study him, much of the time he gives the game away by what he says. And last summer, when this Epstein thing came up big time, he started talking about the Epstein hoax, although I don't know what that means in this context, but linking it with what he calls the Russia hoax, which we all know is about Russian assistance for him in his campaign. Certainly in his head, it seemed to me that the two were intricately linked, and I think we're now finding out why.
Is it your sense that out of those 2 or 3 million files yet to be revealed that Donald Trump has fought tooth and nail not to be released, there's going to be a big reveal in there that will tell us a lot more about Donald Trump and Russia?
Yeah, I'm not sure there'll be a big reveal because a lot of this is emails and photographs, albeit clandestine ones, it looks like. And of course, some of the time I'm talking about predates emails even. It's that old. But I think there could be certainly pointers in there. I don't rule out that some of the documents might have been destroyed over time as well to protect Trump. I think that the US administration has not played a straight bat on this at all, and has been trying to delay the release of these files, limit the release by redacting large chunks of them, and so on. So I don't have any faith that this Trump administration would release files, even if they did have compromising data on Trump, which weren't blacked out or redacted.
Christopher Steele there. Well, next up, the last remaining nuclear arms pact between the US and Russia is hours away from expiring. It means that for the first time in more than half a century, there'll be no caps on the world's 2 largest atomic arsenals. Here's our Moscow correspondent, Ivor Bennett.
We're about to enter a world without nuclear arms control. This is a big moment. On Thursday, the last remaining treaty between Russia and the US capping their arsenals will expire. And it means for the first time in more than 50 years, there'll be no limits to their missiles and warheads. So how have we got here? What does it mean? And should we be worried? The first agreement on arms control between the world's 2 nuclear superpowers was in 1972, signed by US President Richard Nixon and Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev. Its aim was to slow the arms race and prevent a potentially catastrophic misunderstanding. In 1991 came the START Treaty. That was the first time both sides had to reduce their arsenals, and it began the inspection process, where each side could check the other was complying with the limits. The most recent treaty, the New START, was signed in 2010 by Barack Obama and Dmitry Medvedev. It was extended by 5 years in 2021. That caps the number of deployed strategic warheads on each side at 1,550. Now that's clearly more than enough for Russia and the US to destroy each other, but it's a cap nonetheless. And when that treaty expires on Thursday, that cap will no longer exist. And that sparked fears of a new nuclear arms race.
It's a serious situation, so probably now we can witness a lot of developments, especially in the US nuclear policy, and the situation will be quite unpredictable. There is a real danger of nuclear arms race in the coming years.
So why not just extend the treaty like they did before? Because it can only be extended once. And after relations broke down over Russia's invasion of Ukraine, there haven't been any more talks to replace it. Vladimir Putin has proposed an informal extension for another year, but so far Donald Trump hasn't accepted. Now, some say he's crazy not to, believing the US will be the one that loses out if there is an arms race. But others believe it's actually a good move because it frees America up to compete with the nuclear buildup of other nations like China. And China is clearly on Donald Trump's mind. He says he wants a new trilateral arms control treaty that includes Beijing. But such treaties, they're not easy.
We never tried
trilateral, actually, negotiations. Multilateral negotiations are generally more actually complex. Number one. Number two, who says it's going to be trilateral? The official actually Russian position and the official Chinese position is that negotiations can be bilateral between the United States and Russia, or they can be five-party, including the United Kingdom and France.
Barring any last-minute deals, all this means we're entering uncharted territory. Things won't change overnight, but the lack of any agreement after so many decades of cooperation shows both a lack of trust between Moscow and Washington and a broader lack of interest in arms control. And it could make the world a much more dangerous place.
Well, as if we didn't have enough to worry about. How worried should we be? Well, let's speak now to Dr. Lyndon Burford, who's a policy fellow at BASIC, a nuclear risks think tank. It sounds deeply concerning, Doctor, but I mean, how worried should we be? How significant is this, do you think, in the scheme of things?
Well, I think, as your listeners have heard there from your correspondent, the unfortunate truth is that it's a very big deal. And indeed, we should be worried. There's 12,300 nuclear weapons still in existence today, according to the Federation of American Scientists. And they estimate that 86% of those weapons are in Russia and the United States. So for these two countries to stop talking to each other is a big deal. It puts us, as your correspondent said, in a situation that we haven't been in for more than 50 years, which is that there are now no agreed constraints on these nuclear arsenals. And this is coming in the context of a broadly much more dangerous world, because now we've also got to deal with the changes from climate change, ecosystem collapse, AI, other new emerging and disruptive technologies. So the world really is in a dangerous place, and we need concerted action to try and step back from some of these broader challenges, like your correspondent mentioned, around arms racing.
It's a bit of a paradox here, isn't there? Because it's hard to think of an American and Russian president in recent history, at least, having as cosy relationship, it seems, as Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump have. I mean, I think the American president just stuck up a photograph of the two of them in the White House. How, despite that, have we ended up in a situation where Russia and America are coming apart at the seams in terms of nuclear arms control?
Well, it's been a long decline, really. We've seen 20 plus years of gradual decay in the relationship. We've lost a bunch of other treaties, the Anti-Ballistic Missile Defense Treaty, the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, Open Skies Treaty. So we've seen a whole series of treaties that we've lost that have contributed to and also reflected this breakdown in relations over time. It is true that, on the face of things, Vladimir Putin and President Trump do have a good relationship. And certainly we know that President Trump likes to do deals. So it's not impossible that something could be done. But as your viewers heard from the video segment, there's also concern about China and how China might fit into this picture. And I think the reality is that if we want China to be involved, we also have to be willing to sit down and listen to the concerns that China has around missile defense, for example, which it takes to be a serious threat to its national security. So we're in a dangerous place, but we've been here before, and we have dug our way out of these situations before. And I think we could look to history for examples of the type of action we could take.
If you look at the history of the Cold War, I think a number of times we actually came much closer to Armageddon than we thought at the time. You'd have thought with modern technology, sort of early warning systems and better communications, that would be less likely. Is that something to hang on to?
It's a mixed bag, and that the answer to that question really depends on who you ask. The thing is that the more complex that our systems become, the more possibility there is for them to go wrong over time, whether it's because an update is incorrectly installed or there's a bug in the system or whatever it is. So it's not just a matter of that more newer technology results in better outcomes for strategic stability. These are really political issues at the end of the day. And so it comes down to, is there political will? What's possible in terms of international dialogue and negotiation? And what can we imagine? And as we've alluded to, we've been in really dangerous situations before, and in the late 1950s and early 1960s, where at that point, again, there were no restraints on any of these arsenals. People in that world looked to the future and they thought this is a dangerous direction that we're heading with nuclear arms racing. And the result was that across the 1960s and into the 1970s, we started to get these multilateral and bilateral negotiations and even agreements, like the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is meeting this year in New York again, and like the START and later New START treaties. So we've been here before, we've been able to make it through these challenges before, and we can do it again. And we need to do the groundwork now to make that possible when those opportunities come up. I think if you think of Reagan, no one would accuse Reagan of being a starry-eyed idealist, and he went from his evil empire speech in 1983 through to a really critical nuclear treaty, the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, just 4 years later, signed with Gorbachev. And so change is possible. The direction of travel right now is really not great, but we have to be willing to face the hard realities now and do the groundwork that needs to be done to make it possible to take positive steps in the direction of collaborative and cooperative security in the future.
Dr. Burford, back to the future then, but not in a good way. Thank you very much, though, for your expertise on that subject. Well, coming up next on The World, families describe the joy of reuniting in Gaza despite returning to a land shattered by war.
Over there, to your left. There have been airstrikes every day. Hezbollah are very sensitive about us showing any pictures, and we're being hurried away right now.
It felt akin to riding into some sort of Armageddon.
Many other areas have been hit badly. There are shells coming in every few minutes.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
It's trying to hit us. That's it. It got us then.
There's a lot of action going on. A lot of hits still.
We were the first journalists and the only outsiders to reach the site of the attack several weeks after it happened.
We found from the missile.
It's very difficult to see what around here could be conceived of as a legitimate military target.
Only about half a mile from the Turkish coast, boat seriously overcrowded.
This is one of the most severe viruses in the world. Clearly not had very much to eat at all, a lot of them extremely thin and very frail. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The world's largest falls now down to a trickle in places.
I can't imagine how much plastic is lying at the bottom of this huge lake. Whoa!
Getting up close and personal with a rhino.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome, Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think is really unusual? Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
To
Gaza now, where it's been a day of hope for some Palestinians whose families have been reunited following the partial reopening of the Rafah crossing on the Egyptian border. But they've returned to a shattered and dangerous place where 24 Gazans were killed today by Israeli airstrikes. Our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons reports from Jerusalem.
They were greeted with raw emotion. People who had left Gaza during the war, whose memories had been cherished by those they'd left behind, but who had now come back. These are the people who made the choice to return to Gaza, a place racked by the pain of war, but a land embraced in their hearts.
An indescribable feeling. I'm very happy that I came back to my husband, my sons, my family, my beloved, and also to my homeland. The homeland feeling is the most important.
And so these were all tears of joy for family and for the rejuvenation of coming home.
When the crossing was blocked and I could not come back, I spent 2 years without a single day of peace and thinking of my sons, my brothers, sisters, and my family. Thank God I came back to Gaza. I smelled its scent and its air from far away.
The journey's back made possible by the reopening of the Rafah crossing, which links Gaza and Egypt. But so far, only a tiny number have been able to cross each way, just a few dozen. And for those who have returned to Gaza, what's greeted them has been a shattered landscape and the knowledge that an arduous life will be the price they pay for a joyful reunion. That's what drives the desire to return. This woman is asked if she's prepared for a future life living in a tent amid rubble.
Do you know something? If I sit under a tree, it's better than being away from home. Yes, I'm happy because I got back to the tent, because this tent contains my sons, my daughters, and my daughters' sons, my brothers and my family.
Gaza remains a terribly dangerous place. Within hours of those families being reunited, the Israeli military launched airstrikes that killed at least 20, including a paramedic. This the scene that greeted emergency services.
There was a paramedic here. The Red Crescent ambulance came and they attacked them, and one of them was killed.
The Israeli military said its strikes had targeted one of the terrorists who had led the October the 7th attacks. And it said it regretted any harm caused to what it referred to as uninvolved civilians. The story of today's Gaza is one of turbulence, a place where nothing is certain, safe or reliable. And yet some who left this place now dream of returning here. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Now, one of the most august names in American journalism has been dealt a massive blow by its owner today. The Washington Post, the paper that led the Watergate stories and so many others, whose motto is "Democracy dies in darkness," is seeing the most drastic job cuts in its history. Jeff Bezos, the owner of he is in fact one of the world's richest men, has approved devastating staff cuts, as much as a third of its workforce, including much of its foreign and domestic bureaus. And he has entirely closed down the newspaper's sports department. Let's speak now to our US correspondent, Mark Stone. This has been described as an absolute bloodbath, but also a former executive editor saying this is an attempt by Jeff Bezos to curry favour with Donald Trump. How's this going down in the city of the Washington Post this evening?
Well, it is a devastating blow for the Post, clearly, for the media landscape in America more generally. Marty Baron is a former editor of the Post, a legend in his own right in his business. And he said today, this ranks among the darkest days in the history of one of the world's greatest news organizations. The Washington Post's ambitions will be sharply diminished. Its talent and brave staff will be further depleted. And the public will be denied ground-level, fact-based reporting in the communities around and around the world that is needed now more than ever. Look, you know, you and I both know that newsrooms around the world, Dominic, are facing massive commercial pressures, but it is the case that many of us are trying to kind of rebuild or remodel what we do as the plane is flying through the most extraordinary storm of news. What the Post appears to have done is to crash land that plane now, and it is, well, it's devastating clearly for many people, but also the Washington Post, more than perhaps any other American newspaper, with the exception perhaps of its rival, the New York Times, has such an extraordinary global reach and domestic reach as well, with newsrooms across the country. Its Middle East reporters, all of them have been laid off. A lot of domestic reporters as well. So this is a big blow for the paper and for the media industry.
Yeah, and there's so much going on, isn't there, that it could be reporting on with all the resources it has. Its masthead motto is democracy dies in darkness. Over the last few days, a number of blows to democracy in America, with Donald Trump raising the possibility of the federal government nationalising elections. One of his key, Lieutenant Steve Bannon, saying that polling stations in the midterm elections could be surrounded by ICE agents. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, maybe democracy is dying in plain sight. I mean, you could see that with what is going on at the moment. This idea that elections, Trump says elections should be nationalised, that the federal government should run elections, which, as you know, as we all know, are run by individual states. Pretty remarkable stuff. He's announced yesterday as well that he wants to knock down the Kennedy Center that he's already renamed the Trump Kennedy Center. Lots going on. It's really very hard to keep up.
Mark Stone in Washington, thank you very much. So an extraordinary day for democracy in the UK and democracy dying potentially in America. That's it for The World for tonight. I'll be back tomorrow at 9 p.m. Stay with Sky News now if you can. Gillian Joseph here soon with The Wrap.